Welcome, 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 everyone. Happy Thursday. This, of course, is Talent Experience Live, the show that covers everything that you need to know in talent acquisition, recruiting, talent management, and HR as a whole. I am your host, Devin Foster, and this lovely program is proudly brought to you by the good folks here at Phenom, whose purpose is to help 1 billion find the right job. Of course, that's not a typo. That is why we post great content like this and other fantastic events like I Am Phenom India, I Am Phenom here in the States, our global representation of that conference, and every other HR tech event under the sun. But you may be thinking, being at events is great. How do you truly help 1 billion find the right work? And the truth is, it's through our talent experience platform, which helps candidates find the right fit faster, employees evolve in their current roles and beyond, recruiters achieve some next level productivity and efficiency, while managers get to build better teams with data, analytics, and of course, automation. And you can't mention automation without mentioning artificial intelligence, and all of that is powered on the back end here at Phenom. So head on over to phenom.com to learn more if you are interested. So we host this show every single Thursday, and we've been doing it for 3 years now. And this episode is going to be our year in review, our classic clip show, if you will. It's entitled, Now That's What I Call TXL. So what we're going to do is dive into the ultimate year in review episode, highlighting some of our favorite guests and speakers, some of the great discussions and insights that we've had, everything from employees and managers discussing salary to the challenges of high volume hiring, exploring the ever-evolving conversation around skills, and everything in between. So without any further hesitation, here's just a few of our clips and a friendly reminder for you to tune in every single Thursday at noon Eastern time to learn more. And maybe you'll see a ghost or two. Thanks so much. Here's the clips.
Should we normalize how we approach and when we approach salary conversations?
Yeah.
That's how I took it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the answer is yes.
Yeah.
An employee and manager should be able to talk about salary anytime. They should be able to come revisit it multiple times a year, especially if there's a disconnect between what the employee feels and where the manager is.
Mm-hmm.
It's healthy, but there's a caution, as you know, right? Because we talk about these things. It doesn't mean you're going to have an outcome that everyone's pleased with. Yeah. But there's a big difference between having the ability and openness to talk about things, salary or not anything, talk about things openly and consistently, and actually get to a place where someone goes, oh, that's exactly what I wanted. That may not happen, but the conversation shouldn't be avoided.
In the blog, you mentioned this concept of paper ceilings, which I hadn't heard before. I've heard of, glass floors, glass ceilings. The paper ceiling is a little bit different to me. So I want to ask you, is this a new concept, a new terminology? And is it something that we've been dealing with for a very long time, or is it nuanced?
Yeah, no, I definitely think we've been dealing with it for a long period of time. I think that you could see that in the way that it's difficult to find the right talent and to get the right talent into those jobs that you need. Mm-hmm. But I believe in like the last couple of years, it's really picked up so much steam with people championing the movement towards skills and thinking about how to reevaluate a person's worth, value, and employment experience in order to leverage that to be effective within an organization.
First question, I think the most important one here is, why do you keep vanishing? Why do you keep leaving recruiters high and dry? People have called you Bigfoot with a resume. Is there something about recruiters or hiring managers that leaves you saying, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore? Help us understand a little bit here. Recruiters are scary overall. They're intimidating with their phone calls, with their emails. But what's even scarier about their emails is there's simply no personalization. There's no punctuation. You'd think that with all of this generative AI, they would leverage some of it when following up. I get emails that just say, hey, first name, thanks for applying. First name? My mom doesn't even call me first name. So yeah, there's a lot of room to be improved there. I think they're probably nice people, but they've scared me away from a lot of their companies. I get it.
To be really candid, because I don't want to pretend, I do think that there are going to be job losses as a result of AI. Sometimes I ask how much more efficient AI is going to make us, right? There's a cynical way to look at this, and that is, if AI makes us 10% efficient, then can you cut 10% of your workforce? And it's a legitimate question. The challenge, I think, in the marketplace today, like specific for recruiters, so would we lay off all of our recruiting staff across these organizations, as an example? In those cases, most organizations, and there's a difference between the near-term answer and the long-term example, right? The long-term answer. In the near term, I think organizations have already cut their staff to the bone. In most cases, right? Most organizations that I talk to, like those recruiters, they're overwhelmed. There's more to do than there is time in the day to do it. And so those people, what is nice is we are removing parts of their job that most people hate. You know what I mean? So like sometimes I think of Steve Hunt, by the way, every time I talk about this. Repetitive stress injuries, we all know what those are, right? Repetitive motion injuries, like on a factory floor. There's something analogous to that, and that is like the repetitive psychological injury. And so if we talk about recruiting, nobody cares if you typed out your 51st job requisition. Right? Yeah. It is a thankless job that recruiters engage in all the time. And they typically don't love it. It's not like it's creative work. It's legalistic. You know what I mean? And it's repetitive. And so if you could have AI do something like create a job requisition for you, you would get time back in your day to do the things that the organization does thank you for. You know what I mean? And that would be actually talking to a candidate, inspiring them about your value proposition, those kind of activities that that you're valued for. And so I think in the short term, there are all kinds of ways that these tools are going to add value to our day-to-day lives. They're going to ease the burden of repetitious tasks that we don't want to engage in.
Seems like we're having this conversation every day, if not every hour. And so when I think about, skills as related to some of the other terminologies that we use, we've used the word job ever since, I would say, Adam Smith wrote about division of labor over a century ago. And a job has always been a collection of tasks. And so as we think about what is a skill is something that encompasses a hard technical skills such as something like coding or data analysis, accounting. And then it can also range into human capabilities such as critical thinking and emotional intelligence and empathy. It can go into potential, including things like the abilities to have adjacency around some of those things. And so I think skills to me really just brings that definition of work from something more aggregate at the collection of tasks and abilities level to a more granular definition. That means, how do we as individuals really have the abilities, the interests, the passions, the motivations to do a particular piece of work or a particular activity in our lives?
The shift has happened. We're talking about skills now in the forefront. There's outside, I think you can get a skills warrior card that it almost looks like a Pokemon card. It's all AI done. I don't think that's driving the conversation for sales, to be completely honest. It's been here before. What do you think the industry why is the industry really focused on them now? And why is it on every HR blog, on news articles and everything like that?
Let me take that one first.
From
sort of, again, we'll do macro and then we'll go down.
I'm sorry.
No. Only because, again, I look at everything sort of from a macro perspective, being a labor economist. And I think, like you mentioned, we've been talking about skills for a long time. And my first conversations are really around skills-based organization, I think started around like 2017, 2018, 2019, when the labor market was just as tight as it is today. And people forget that pre-pandemic times, I mean, we were having the same conversations, just not in the context of a pandemic, right? So that's, I think, when employers started to think about the talent shortages that they were happening, and what's, again, a pragmatic way that I can solve that problem. So to me, that's sort of the evolution, is in terms of just the tightness of the labor market. And then now we're seeing all these demographic shifts and headwinds, right? We have retiring baby boomers. Also in 2025, we're going to see a maximum in terms of the number of high school graduates. So we're going to be squeezed on both sides of the age spectrum, and employers are starting to realize, oh, my labor supply is going to be more limited.
It's finite.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're in a reflection area time where we're going to see a lot of change happening over the course of the next few months and the next couple of years. Generative AI is definitely changed and reshaped a lot of the things that we're doing today within messaging, within content, within the distribution of content. But it's also disrupting the way candidates are presenting themselves as well. And so I don't think we've got our arms wrapped around what that's going to mean completely from a technology perspective. I think what we're going to see is candidates starting to use generative AI to recreate their resume, to recreate their story that maps directly to the job, which means we don't have a fit analysis anymore. So we're going to see new tools come out with skills, new schools that come out with better ways of mapping somebody's capabilities, experiences, and those pieces that are going to change the dynamic in which we have for organizations to really assess that fit factor.
Yeah. So in terms of, the support of the operation, you can't expect that all of your users are just going to figure stuff out on their own. And you can plan for a good percentage of the use cases during the implementation, but it's a continuous ongoing thing. We're always finding new challenges, problems, things that we have to solve for. And so if you don't have operational support that can constantly take those potentially new challenges, new requirements, and figure out what's the right best use case, frictionless use case, best experience within the technology, slowly the users start doing those things outside the system. You have to look at every new situation, figure out what's the best way to funnel that through our system. And the reason is I need them to do it through the system because that's what's generating the digital footprint and the data. So even if it might be maybe slight one extra step that they've got to do by putting in the system, the value of having all the data makes it worth it for me to do that extra step. But I can't, if I ignore it, the users end up doing things on their own outside the system, and it slowly erodes over time.
Yeah, I guess with regards to interview processes, I mean, obviously, there's probably an overarching theme at the moment, given the economic situation. Our research has found that organizations overall are under pressure to do more with less. HR and talent acquisition budgets are under pressure, probably like they've never been before across the past few years. The pandemic obviously did a lot for digitization in HR and talent acquisition as well. But now I think there's a stronger emphasis on hiring the best fit. There's no room for error in this recessive economy. That definitely for interviews. Then I guess that means that the quality of the interviews has to increase both systematically in terms of the outcomes it produces, but also systemically in terms of the efficiency, the tools that are getting used. And yeah, I mean, honestly, across the past few years, organizations, I guess, have done already quite a bit to improve the interview process. We've seen huge shifts. Obviously, during the pandemic, everything went virtual. We're still in a world where hybrid working, remote working is the reality for most desk-based workers. So definitely that has caused many shifts. And so many organizations have maybe made some steps up the maturity curve, I would say, and improved at least, a couple of things in their process, across screening, scheduling, and interviewing. I mean, we can dive a little bit deeper as we go. But certainly, according to these outcomes and efficiencies, it's quite important at the moment that organizations look at that. And in the conversations we're having with HR leaders, with TA leaders, that is certainly one of the major themes going on at the moment as well.
For you to share some of that expertise on experiences, these consumers are oftentimes your talent, right? When we're talking about high volume hiring, they're people that frequent your business, they're people that purchase from you. So they expect that level of really smoothness, I think, and synergy between the two businesses. Which brings me to kind of my next point. What are, you think, expectations now? What are must-have expectations when it comes to a high-volume hiring approach?
Well, I'd say there's two expectations. You have the candidate expectation and what they're hoping for when they're applying for a job.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also have the recruiter and the employer and manager expectation too. If you put yourself in the shoes of a candidate that's looking for a job, they want as easy of an application experience as possible. They want to understand the hours that they would work. They want to understand clearly what the compensation is going to look like. And they want to know a little bit about what a day in the life would be like working for your company. So I think that clarity and really focusing on exactly what the roles and responsibilities are in your job postings and telling that story is where you start to attract people, because they get all their questions answered right away. The other thing is I think that candidates are expecting a really smooth application process. So if, as an HR team, if you can invest in tools that allow these types of candidates that are the frontline workers that are applying in volume to apply from any device, from their mobile phone, from a tablet, from the family computer, making that process as smooth as possible is going to allow you to attract the people from the company down the street that's looking for that same person, but it's really difficult to apply to get or to hear back from them when you apply, that kind of stuff.
Makes sense.
From a manager perspective, it's all about speed and accuracy. I touched on a little bit before. They want to make sure that they're hiring the right person. They want to make sure that and the HR team is looking at this too, that they're getting so many applications that they don't have time to review all of those applications and screen them appropriately.
But you're going to have to compare and contrast your entire content strategy when it comes to talent acquisition as a whole. Yeah. Is there a way to see if your content is engaging and if one option may be better than the other? How would you suggest folks do that?
That's a really good question. And I think people get lost because it's so big, right? They're like, well, I have this asset management system and I have over 100 pieces in there. I don't have time to go in and look at the analytics and what does that actually mean? But really, my suggestion would be to start small. Okay. So let's just say your organization, maybe the top departments you're trying to fill are in sales and marketing, or maybe they're frontline, right? Start small, start there. Look at that content. Is that content being shared on social? And could it, right? Could that drive some additional traffic over? Are those pages indexed for search engines? Are they discoverable? First of all, like, why put this content out and do all this work and effort if the search engine can't find it? You're kind of, you're holding yourself back in that way. But some people's like, well, I'm not a marketer. I'm not someone with this code experience. You don't need it anymore. With how smart things are in every day, you can have the intelligence do it. All you have to know is where to look on the dashboard, and that's it. And then make some decisions. So if you're seeing content, for example, maybe you only have 2 contents for maintenance jobs, but the traffic to those pages are insane. So it's not necessarily in scale with what you're seeing as far as, traffic to the page. You might think, hey, you know what? I'm getting a lot of traffic here. Maybe I should bump up my content there. So just start small. It's hard to look at the whole thing right away. And then once you start doing these little pieces, before you know it, you've just audited your entire suite of content.
Yeah.
But that's actually one of the number one complaints.
Really?
Yeah, is the candidates feel, whether it's for the talent acquisition recruiter
Yeah.
or a hiring manager, candidates are feeling as if their time is not being valued.
Yeah.
And it is showing up late. It's asking repetitive questions or multiple interviews, and everyone's asking the same question. Like, why is that happening?
I imagine even running over, right? Like putting my candidate hat on for a moment.
Yeah.
You currently have a role, right? You're looking for a new one. You sneak away on your lunch break or whatever it may be.
Babysitting.
Exactly. Now you have to, come back to work and explain where you were. So that's fascinating, but it's teachable, right? And coachable at the end of the day, where you can work with, much like the example where you showed interview skills, you can work on time blocking, right?
That's right.
Making sure that there's
Use
enough of a
technology
gap.
to help with these things.
Reschedule when you need to, things like that.
We've covered a lot of different pieces. And again, I think I would just encourage clients to go ahead and look at their own career website. Do a search, go to Google, do a search for whatever job you're recruiting for. Go to some of the different platforms, go look to see what your content is on LinkedIn or on Facebook or on Reddit or on TikTok or whatever you are, to try to see like, how are you showing up and get a little bit out of your own, your own space. Like, take your hat off that I'm somebody who works here. I know I'm constantly, when I'm talking to family and friends, they're like, what exactly do you do? Recruitment marketing. So we're constantly explaining, but I think one, evaluate where you're at. And then two, reach out and talk to, come talk to us, contact me. We will get on the phone and kind of help you decipher like what is that pain point that you're trying to fix? Is there a tech solution in there? Is there something that we can recommend? That's probably where I would start.
Hiring managers, and really depending on the role, right? They have so much on their plate. Think of maybe it's retail and it's a store manager that's hiring. Imagine all the daily tasks that they have to do, right? And they need people too. So how do you manage both, right? These screening tools really help them quickly narrow down that pool of candidates. And here's why that matters, because that means they're spending less time in interviews. Right? It's the worst feeling in the world to know you gave an hour of your time up just to learn, shoot, that candidate is not even going to work out.
Special thanks to all of our guests this year on Talent Experience Live. Can't wait to have you all back on future episodes to discuss the ever so changing landscape of human resources, talent acquisition, talent management, and everything in between. This will be our last episode in the Lord's year of 2024, so cannot wait to see you in 2025 for more insightful conversations and just overall tips and tricks that you can apply to your day-to-day work. I hope everyone has a safe, happy, and healthy new year. Enjoy your holiday, and can't wait to see you in 2025. Thanks so much.